being the fastest quarterback you've never seen. I'll be right back. There's no quicker way to get into DFS. Play Super Draft today and see for yourself.
We're behind. They're all fired up. What we got to do? First place, our defense has got to go out there and take the ball. Then when we get the ball, we got to have 11 people that's going to do their job and try to score every time you get the football. If we do that, we'll be all right. That will be all right.
Happy Monday, everybody. This is another edition of Football University with me, former University of Alabama wide receiver Matt Caddell. It is Monday, and we had a crazy bit of news breaking today. So, this is what we do at Football University. We talk anything and everything football related, and yes, we find a way to bring it back at Alabama. So Roll Tide, RTR, 6-0 Roll Tide, Bama Nation, Lori Caddell. Shouts out to everybody, all the fans that tune in into Football University. And we're going to start it off, dive right in with the biggest news of today. Speaking of Roll Tide, shouts out to Jalen Hurts on this Monday, or this money-making Monday. Jalen Hurts, I don't know if you've been under a rock or so, but Jalen Hurts is now the highest paid player in NFL history, inking a big deal today with the Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to talk about it here at Football University. Listen, Jalen Hurts, money. Yes, I don't know what happened. Sorry. But like I said, Jalen Hurts, 5-year deal, $255 million. Getting about 180 guaranteed, $51 million per year. He is now the highest paid player in the NFL, surpassing Aaron Rodgers. And you know how I feel about Aaron Rodgers. By $2 million, I think Aaron Rodgers is getting $49 million. Now Jalen Hurts is getting $51 million. So shouts out to Jalen Hurts. He did it the right way. I saw this funny tweet. It said, Alabama has the mantra of where legends are made. They say Alabama where legends are paid. You look at Jalen Hurts inking this big deal. And interesting about this deal, it sets up perfectly for him to get paid early. And I'm always intrigued by teams that go ahead and pay their players early. Jalen Hurts, now the highest paid player in the NFL. I think this is great. I think this is huge for him. I'm glad I got on my green. For all the Eagles fans out there, fly, Eagles fly. So let's get in the student section. 6-0 says, listen, Alabama produces legends and history makers. You know, he does. Jalen Hurts is an Alabama alum. So an Alabama alum is now the highest paid NFL player in history. So happy for Jalen. Roll Tide, roll. So yeah, Jalen Hurts. And now we're talking about Jalen Hurts and him getting this monumental deal. I want to talk about how this impacts certain teams or certain players. And I want to talk about, because this is what we do at Football University, how it puts pressure on Lamar Jackson. You look at Jalen Hurts, how he handled his business, you know, being benched at the national championship game, coming back to Alabama the next year, winning the SEC championship, you know, taking us back to 2 national championships, winning the SEC championship in form or fashion. I mean, it's something out of a movie. Coming in for Tua, relieving him, but going on to Oklahoma, being successful, being a second-round draft pick. And a lot of people are going to say, you know, the knock on Jalen was his passing, but kudos to Jalen, showing what type of character, what type of work ethic he continued to develop at his passing game, develop in the passing game, and continue to improve. So a lot of young guys out there, continue to work on your craft, and sky's the limit. Maybe you could sign a big contract like Jalen Hurts, but shouts out to Jalen. He did it the right way, graduated from Alabama, got his education, got his degree, and he has great management. So I want to shout out Nicole Lynn. She is representing him. She is a graduate of University of Oklahoma. She is paving ways for, you know, Black women in football, especially agents. She's an author. She's a president of football operations for Clutch Sports. She's an attorney and she's an agent. And so she's able to bring this big deal. Started with Quentin Williams having a top 5 prospect. So I want to shout out Nicole Lynn. And I want to shift to how it affects Lamar. And I know I mentioned Lamar Jackson earlier, but listen, Lamar doesn't have an agent. And I feel like that's what's hurting him from getting this deal. I feel like if he had a Lamar Jackson, if he had a Nicole Lynn, that could be beneficial for Lamar. And I think it puts pressure on the Indianapolis Colts. You know, I think the Indianapolis Colts at the number 4 pick, and I'll talk about the draft later, but I think they could make a move and get Lamar Jackson. And, it's very interesting. So let's get in the comments. I had to talk about Jalen Hurts. Let's get in the student section. Stephen Hicks says, Alabama Crimson Tide is coming. New attitude. Bring back the Bama Standard. Speaking of the Bama Standard, Alabama football had their second scrimmage this past weekend. And, interesting stories that we heard coming out. Coach Saban mentioned that, the quarterbacks were kind of up and down. They both had really good moments. And they are, they probably had some plays they wanted to get back into. So I think right now, I still think it's a 2 quarterback, right? System. I think as of right now, we'll probably run 2 quarterbacks. That's just my thoughts. Until somebody separates themselves. But even if somebody does separate themselves during the season, I still think it's important we're able to play both quarterbacks because I think they present a lot of dynamics with the leadership of Tommy Rees. So William Bryan says, roll tide to everyone. So I gave you my 2 cents on the quarterback. We know A-Day is next weekend, so we need all the Bama fans to show up and show out. I'm still hoping we get, beautiful weather, and we can maybe get like 80, 81, 82,000 there in Bryant-Denny. So all the Bama fans, get your family, your friends, go out to Tuscaloosa on A-Day, enjoy watching the play. Let's get in the student section. Stephen Hicks has a great point. He says, Matt, do you think Ty will get the nod? I don't know who's going to get the nod. I still haven't placed my eyes on the quarterbacks. I still haven't seen, what they're able to do. I know Saban and the staff, they're being very methodical, very strategic when it comes to this quarterback race. But, Ty Simpson might get the nod, or Jalen Milroe might get the nod. Only time will tell, but what I'm hearing, I think both of those guys are pushing each other. And I think it's important they continue to develop and play with confidence and run the offense to their best ability and really, help make the other players play better, like a Jalen Hurts, being effective in the passing game, the running game, distributing ball, not turning the ball over, making the right decisions. And I think whichever quarterback does that, Stephen Hicks will get the nod. So we'll only find out. So we'll find out a lot 8A, but I still think it's going to be both quarterbacks as of right now. So RTR, let's get to stay in the student section. Good point. This could be a good point by Lord Caddell said. This could be a good recruiting tool for Saban, for players to know there's always opportunities, even if you take a backseat at times. Yeah, great point. I mean, you look at Jalen Hurts, and I mentioned the character, the perseverance, the mentality to handle adverse situations. Sometimes in life you're going to have adversity. Either adversity is going to break you, or adversity is going to help for somebody else break records. And at this point, Jalen Hurts went through adversity, but it did not break him. He ended up breaking records, being the highest paid quarterback or player in the NFL. So as Lori Caddell said, this is a great recruiting tool for Alabama, for Coach Saban. We know Coach Saban is the standard when it comes to college football recruiting. Everybody wants that Alabama offer. Everybody wants to be recruited by Alabama. So to Jalen's point, I think this shows a lot about Jalen and how Alabama basically just puts the best product out there in the NFL. I mean, you look at Jalen, you look at Tua, you look at Mac Jones, you look at Bryce Young, you look at defensively, you look at Patrick Surtain, you look at Minkah Fitzpatrick, you look at Quentin Williams, Deron Payne. Bama puts out the best product when it comes to the NFL. And like you said, I think that's a great recruiting tool. So, and I'm going to park there, and I'm going to bring up another point. Since this is a great recruiting tool, can we just take a second and applaud how this run of quarterbacks for Coach Saban with Jalen Hurts, then Tua, then Mac Jones, and now Bryce Young, put some respect on Alabama quarterbacks. Back in the past, people would have the running jokes about Alabama quarterbacks not being, they're great system quarterbacks, but not being effective or dominant in the NFL. You cannot say that anymore. You look from Jalen to Bryce. I mean, this is a great run. So put some respect on Alabama quarterbacks. So let's stay in the student section. Y'all are on a roll. Let's say Stephen Hicks says, I hope Milroe would start, but use both. I say, to your point, I don't know who's going to start, but I do think we're going to use both quarterbacks. That's just what I'm feeling right now, because I think they're going to let it happen organically. And it's a long season. I think with Tommy Rees, kind of knew he's want to fill out both quarterbacks and see what do best and works best for our offense. So yes. Let's see. I'll be having a tailgate set up Saturday. Listen, get to William Bryant's tailgate set up on Saturday and 8A. Come out. Listen, I'm hoping for 80,000. We get there. Hope we pack it out for 8A. We're going to talk about other schools that had springs. I think Tennessee had played their spring game, Georgia, Florida, Texas. A lot of teams played their spring game, but let's talk about Alabama because we're the standard. Let's get to Jeff Stapleton's comments. He said, could be another 2-quarterback system until Saban, one of them steps out in front. I agree with you. As of right now, I think it's kind of both quarterbacks. I think that's kind of, y'all are leading me to my next topic. I think that's kind of what you're going to see around the league in the SEC. You're going to see not only Alabama, you probably see both quarterback, excuse me, kind of play maybe 170%, 30%, 60-40, however that dynamic plays out. But like I said, around the league, outside of what South Carolina, you look at Georgia, they might be doing two quarterbacks. You look at Tennessee with Nico Limalea, Milton at quarterback, they'll probably be doing two quarterbacks. So you probably see a lot of teams within the league. Just one of those years where you probably see two quarterbacks a lot within the college football, SEC football. So let's stay in the comments. 60 says, historic Jalen signing will motivate our present quarterbacks in training. Watch out, college football world. Look, I didn't think about how this could impact our quarterbacks. You look at that quarterback position at Alabama. It is now the heralded position. You look at what Alabama has coming in. You look at the players that they've able to acquire for that position, and you just look at the past history. You look at a Jalen Hurts. You look at a Tua. You look at a Mac Jones, and you look at a Bryce Young, who's potentially probably going to be a Carolina Panther, the #1 pick. Listen, the Alabama quarterback position, listen, it really motivates guys. And I think if you look at a Ty Simpson, Jalen Milroe, those guys probably had practice or went film or threw around today, had an even more motivation to listen. As long as I can continue to develop, work on my craft, be dominant, be effective offensively, then I can maybe, sky's the limit, I can have success like a Jalen. So great point, 6-0. Stephen Hicks says, I agree. Listen, William Bryan, regarding his tailgate, says he hopes to have the CTS-Sports room logo on it. Hopefully we can get it. Shouts out to our producer, Joey Lazada. Maybe we can get that, work that out some way. But let's stay in NFL. So we're talking about Jalen Hurts, and I talked about how it affected Lamar Jackson and the Indianapolis Colts. I want to take it another step level and kind of go back to that conversation and talk about how I think it affects the AFC North, and the AFC North specifically, the Cincinnati Bengals. Once Jalen made this signing, everybody was talking about Lamar and how Joe Burrow is going to get paid. Now we know Joe Burrow might set the market again, maybe next year. But whoever gets their quarterback signed the quickest, whether it's the Ravens with Lamar Jackson or the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow, listen, they're going to win the NFC North. So I thought that was very interesting how this Jalen Hurts contract situation impacts other teams. And not only does it impact the NFC North, it impacts Tua. I think it impacts Tua. I mean, I mentioned Tua, Jalen being benched in that national championship game, going back and forth, Jalen coming back the next year, winning that SEC championship. I mean, it's a perfect written script, something a great movie director is going to write about it, about the success of Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. So I think Tua and Jalen, the debate, they're kind of attached at the hip, so to speak. They both had successful years, but you look at Jalen, I mean, he's the highest paid player. So now it puts pressure. Now the ball's in Tua's court. Now Tua, you're going to have to be effective, not, get injured, no more concussions. But you need to get the Miami Dolphins to the Super Bowl. I'm wearing the Miami Dolphins green. So you need to get them to the Super Bowl. So I think this puts a lot of pressure on Tua. I think Tua's doing great. He looks a little bit thicker, looks a little bit more solid. He's doing jiu-jitsu training, still working with Tyreek Hill, Waddle, some of their new acquisitions. So Miami, they're going to be this puts a lot of pressure, not pressure on Tua, but I think more excitement to say, hey, now if the competitive nature of Tua and Jalen, now Tua's got to step up. Could you imagine having an Eagles Dolphins Super Bowl? Having Jalen and Tua play each other, that would be awesome. So let's get to 6-0's comment. He says if Mac Jones get the right personnel around him in the field, he will make history too, in my opinion. Yeah, I think so too. I just think, he had a rough year last year. being in that, having the injury, having Joe Judge as a co-offensive coordinator who used to be a special teams guy, having Matt Patricia, a defensive guy, coming after Mike McDaniels, the offensive mind, him moving on to being the Las Vegas Raiders head coach. I think, to your point, Mac Jones did prove himself his rookie year being, one of the top quarterbacks, one of the top rookies performing that year. So I think it's important. So let's stay in the student section. Stephen Hicks says, do you think Ty will QB1 side and Milroe on the other side in the scrimmage Saturday? Yeah, I mean, I don't know how the scrimmage is going to work out. They might. I think they're going to try to evenly split up with all the talent. Yeah, so I do think Ty will be the quarterback on one team. I think Milroe will be the quarterback on the other team. But I think both quarterbacks will get reps with the first team offense, if that makes sense. So I think that's how they will rotate the quarterback. Stephen Hicks says, yes, I hope the 8A game, they will let Milroe quarterback the Crimson, let Ty quarterback the white team. Listen, I don't know who it's going to be, but listen, I told you about my 8A experience, being a former player, playing in that game, having the 92,000 fans, Coach Saban's first year, scoring a touchdown in the game. It was crazy atmosphere. And my team lost, so we had to eat beanies and weenies. So the other team got the wins to eat steak that day. So whoever wins, they're going to be eating steak. If not, they're going to be eating beanies and weenies. So 6-0, we got a lot of Jalen Milroe love in here. It says, I have no doubt Jalen Milroe will shine, lead us to the natty. He has got the process in him and motivated to win. Yes, I hope so. Yeah, he's I think he has an opportunity to really go out there and take advantage of this opportunity. So I hope Jalen Milroe does, and I hope that he's, helps us bring us to a national championship and winning it this year. I don't care who the quarterback is. I just want to win another national championship. But I think Jalen is capable. So let's get to the student section. James Knox says, are you forgetting about Najee and the Steelers? Listen, I'm not forgetting about the Najees and the Steelers, James Knox. Shouts out to James Knox. I think he's regarding my comments about how the Jalen Hurts contract situation impacts the NFC North, especially with Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, him coming up for the contract, and, who wants to reign supremacy in that division. So I still think, looking at the quarterback position alone, if Baltimore is able to retain Lamar Jackson, they just signed OBJ. If they can put some pieces around, that could be interesting. But I think I'm not leaving out the Pittsburgh Steelers or Najee. We know Najee is a dynamic runner, but compared to Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, and I look at, Kenny Pickett, the Steelers are still kind of third wheel for me. I don't know if they're going to have enough to surpass the Cincinnati Bengals led by Joe Burrow, Zach Taylor, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mixon. Those guys, they're the only team I know that can go and, beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So interesting point. Great point. I'm not forgetting about the Steelers, and we're going to talk about the Steelers later in regards to the USFL. So keep the comments coming. Let's go. 6-0 says Miami versus the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Tua versus Jalen, the Clash of Titans. Yeah, that will be epic. Listen, I think Tua is going to try to get there, and Jalen's going to be hungry to win it all. He's just a winner. He has that work ethic. He has that dogmatic, wanting to improve, continue to develop attitude. So I won't be surprised if it is. It'll be how entertaining. It'll be an all Alabama Super Bowl. So beanies and weenies, yum. Yeah, those beanies and weenies weren't that great, especially when you look over there. Somebody has a nice ribeye or a nice filet, and they got the butter and they got them cooked to their temperature, and they have the baked potato and the green beans or the asparagus. It looks so good, and you're just eating basically beanies and weenies. So, I did get a meal out of it, so I guess yum to it as well. Stephen Hicks. Lord Caddell says, yum sounds good to me. We'll see. I hope Ty wins. Listen, we got some Ty and Jalen Milroe. It's going to be interesting. I know we got a lot of people saying Milroe or Ty. Listen, I don't know who's going to be the quarterback. I just think right now it's probably going to be more of a 2 quarterback race right now. But, if I had to give the nod, Milroe, he does have the experience, so he might get the nod regarding. So, great comments. Y'all are just rolling for me in the student section. I talked about Jalen getting paid. We talked about how it impacts so many other quarterbacks, teams. I totally say, hey, you got to give Alabama quarterbacks their respect. This is a great run. I talked about how Alabama puts the best product in the NFL. You look at all the players. And this brings up my next comment, which is Bryce Young. I mean, to me, I still think this draft is the Bryce Young Invitational. And big news today, shouts out to Matt Caddell for bringing it up. Bryce Young canceling his remaining pre-draft visits. Panthers, yes, I do think it is a sign that the Carolina Panthers are going to roll with Bryce Young. I mean, this guy, like I said last week, he is the new wave of quarterbacks that are regarded or compared to point guards. I mean, everybody's going to compare him to Steph Curry. He basically is Steph Curry. Plays, might not be the tallest, might not be the biggest, but he's a marksman. He's a sharpshooter. He knows how to create. So Bryce Young canceling his other draft visits. I mean, I think he's met with the top 2 teams, the Texans. I believe he's met with the Colts at number 4. So, I mean, Bryce Young, I don't think he's going to go anywhere beyond number 1. I do think Bryce Young is a Carolina Panther. So let's stay in the student section. James Knox says, what are your thoughts about the secondary? I'm very excited about the secondary. I'm excited about the defense in general because we don't have Pete Golden anymore. So speaking of Pete Golden, Ole Miss had their spring game and the score was 53-52, like no defense whatsoever. So the Pete Golden experience, I'm glad that's happening in Oxford, Mississippi, and not in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So yeah, to your point, James Knox, I'm excited about the defense having Kevin Steele, Tavares, T-Rob coaching the secondary, Robert Balla. I love the new additions, but to the point, the secondary, I believe it's Kool-Aid is the All-American, probably the top cornerback coming off next year's draft. Terrion Arnold, who I think is very talented, he's at the other corner, and having Malachi Moore move to safety, I think that's been really good. And having Caleb Downs at secondary, at the other safety, having Earl Luter, who I think kind of has a little bit of Branch, Minka, and a little Surtain in him. So those right now, the DBs as of now. So I think I'm excited about the secondary. I'm excited about what I'm hearing about the defense, how physical they are at these practices, at these scrimmages, hitting, being physical. So to hear those things from Coach Saban, it's gotten me real excited. But I think, our defense as a whole, we got to get a big push up front to really help the secondary in the deep end. That way they can cover those guys. So great comment. 60 says Alabama players making history all over the NFL. Wonder where them Dogs players at. Oh man, shots fired. Georgia does their thing. I think they just got their national championship rings, or they put a lot of draft prospects in the league, but it's all about Alabama. Alabama is the standard. So shots fired by 60. Shouts out to everybody in the student section. Wow, y'all are going crazy. So yeah, let's go to my next one. Let's go back to Bryce Young. Let's go back to the draft. And I want to talk about Bryce Young, in regards to this, how I think Bryce Young is not only the number 1 pick, but I think, I was in the past, I said it was Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. It's kind of the 2-headed race for the number 1 pick. I think it is Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young is starting to separate himself from CJ Stroud and the rest of the quarterbacks. And I say that because today, Nick Caserio, the Houston Texans GM, D'Amico Ryans bringing it back to Alabama. Shouts out to D'Amico Ryans being the new head coach. I wouldn't be surprised if the Houston Texans at number 2, if they cannot get Bryce Young, I don't know if they're sold at CJ Stroud at number 2. I mean, you never know. I just made me think about, you look at D'Amico Ryans, him coming from the San Francisco 49ers, that elite defense, looking at a Nick Bosa, making the parallels that, hey, maybe he needs to get, if he can't get Bryce Young, maybe he goes get Will Anderson and somebody to really just shore up that defensive front, to really build out this defense and maybe pick up a quarterback later. But to that point, I wanted to highlight how I think Bryce Young is separating himself from the other quarterbacks, i.e. CJ Stroud. And I say this is another reason why I think Bryce Young, I think the Panthers brass, they went to all these pro days, did all these interviews, had all these visits, and I think they came away blown away, even more impressed by Bryce Young. We heard another story about Bryce Young, how he is a great processor of information. They have this new test to assess how players think, how they process information, and I believe it's called the S2 test. And Bryce Young had the highest mark among players in the S2, just showing how he processes and how he sees the game. So to me, I think that even more is separating Bryce Young from CJ Stroud. And another reason why I think Bryce Young is a Carolina Panther. So Bryce, I believe, get ready to, head up to Charlotte up there in North Carolina and be the franchise guy. So we talk. Oh yeah, sneaky news. Nick Caserio. I mentioned how they might not take CJ Stroud at number 2, but he did say at a press conference down there in H-Town how they have been getting calls from teams about that number 2 pick, and so that they're not shopping, but they're opening to listen. And I think that is pretty interesting to hear. So I wouldn't be surprised to see how this draft, the closer we get to that draft date, how the draft is going to play out. Do the Houston Texans take CJ Stroud, or do they, trade back? Somebody maybe trades up. Maybe the Indianapolis Colts, want CJ Stroud, trade for that number 2 pick. Maybe the Texans can get a Michael Pittman as the receiver to really help that young quarterback, and maybe they can pick up a quarterback later, get Will Anderson, pick up some pieces. But it'll be interesting to see. But it gives me another chance to talk about Alabama players. So, and it made me think about what happens if Will Anderson goes to number 2. Alabama will have the number 1 pick and the number 2 pick on draft night. It's nothing you will be able to tell me. I will be bragging how dominant Alabama is. But that's what we do at Football University. Let's get in the student section. I know y'all are going crazy. Shouts out to all the fans. Talking about Alabama's safety secondary, Jeff Saban says we get Moore back. He was doing really good before he got hurt. Yeah, you're talking about Malachi Moore, the product out of Hewitt Trussville. He had that dynamic freshman year where I thought, man, this guy's going to be a Thorpe Award winner, but I do think he's going to have a bounce back, hungry season, championship mode where he's just being dominant, because this is his money year. I got on the green. This is his money year. No more Brian Branch, no more Jordan Battle. They're going to get paid. Now it's his time to go make his claim and be dominant. So, got a Georgia fan in here, KB Jr. Y'all know UGA is going to three-peat seriously. Wow, man, Georgia three-peat. That'll be high cotton. I mean, they could, but you never know. They might. I don't know who Georgia's quarterback is going to be. So I know they had their spring game. I think Carson Beck's one of the quarterbacks and some other guys. But Listen, I think Georgia's going to be competitive, but right now, if I'm looking at the SEC East, I'm kind of going to maybe lean South Carolina. Just looking at what they got coming back. Maybe just from the quarterback position. Shane Beamer's leadership, having that quarterback, the transfer from Oklahoma come back. So I might take a lead. Tennessee, then Tennessee at 2, possibly Georgia, at 3. So it's going to be interesting. So let's stay in the student section. Matt, any word on Derrick Henry being traded? I haven't heard any news as of lately, but I did hear, a couple of weeks ago, we know they got a new regime, Ron Carthon, the new GM for the Tennessee Titans up there in Nashville, Music City, Tennessee. That rumors did kind of break that, maybe the Titans want to shop Derrick Henry. So they're kind of open to that. So if there is a Derrick Henry trade, I think it will happen on draft day or right before the draft kicks off, that you hear about a trade. Maybe the Titans trying to trade up, get them a young quarterback. You think about Derrick Henry, maybe with the Eagles, maybe with Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, that could present. Maybe put him with Tua. I know rumors have been talked about, speaking of another impactful running back out of Florida State, Dalvin Cook. Could he possibly be going down to Miami with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Tua? Listen, the Dolphins are coming, so that could make a lot of noise. So, but Derrick Henry, that would be crazy too. Listen, we got a lot of Georgia talk in the student section. Cindy Reed says, I'm one UGA won't three-peat. Tell you why it's called the Big Bad Tie. She said Georgia's not going to three-peat because of Bama. Listen, I think Bama's on a mission. Spencer says y'all are not dodging Bama this year. Listen, I think having the 12-team playoff, I think the SEC gets 4 or 5 teams into the playoffs, maybe 6. You look at Alabama, you look at South Carolina, you look at LSU, maybe LSU. You look at it, Georgia, Tennessee. I think those are the 5 or 4 teams that get in. So, listen, they'll probably play each other. Listen, Jeff, a lot of talk about the Dogs. Jeff Stapleton says, we'll see about a three-peat. How's your QB struggling? Nobody's talking about him much. Nobody QB. Listen, a lot of shots fired. I don't know what it is about Georgia and Alabama fans. They are just going at it. Listen, let's go back to the draft. Cindy Reed says, I think it'll be awesome for Bryce to go 1 and Will Anderson go number 2. Listen, if Bryce Young goes number 1, all of Charlotte should rejoice. All the people up there in Charlotte should be happy. I think that'll be a good fit. If you're the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young is your quarterback, not only should you be focused on Bryce, you need to be in contact with Bryce and say, listen, now that you're going to be our number 1 quarterback, what do we need? What pieces do we need to go get to put around you for us to win the division? Go get him a receiver like a Josh Downs in the 2nd round or something like that. Put pieces around, put weapons, sure up that running game, sure up that offensive line. The defense, I believe, is decent enough. They were rolling last year. So I think if you put pieces around Bryce, he could make it happen. Listen, I Am One says, y'all watch and see UGA going to three-peat. Listen, Georgia fans are in the house. Shouts out to the Georgia fans in the student section. Jeff Stapleton talking crash money. Said, watch Bama ruin your season. William Brown says, come by the tent on Saturday. Plan on having a giveaway. More details tomorrow night. So listen, go shouts out to William Brown. Y'all are going at these Bulldogs fans. What is going about? He says, y'all talk about how great Georgia is. Has anyone from Alabama gone number 1 overall? I think the last player to go number 1 overall was the great Joe Willie Namath, Broadway Joe, but it wasn't in the NFL. It was the AFL. back then. So Bryce Young will be breaking history if he goes number one. I don't think Alabama has had a player go number one, so that would be exciting to see. And Bryce Young deserves it because he is Bryce Young, that guy. So awesome. Let's I think South Carolina's going to be good this year. I can easily see them coming out the East. Yeah, just because there's Spencer Rattler at quarterback. I think I don't know who else is on the quarterback side, so on the East. So I'm high on South Carolina. I think they got a lot of momentum. I think it's going to be South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, those type of three teams that really are competitive. Um, uh, in that SEC East, says Kirby Smart will be the Georgia quarterback. Y'all are going at it. Y'all, okay, let's stay off this Georgia UGA. Okay, let's go back to the draft. Let's go right here. Smith says, Matt, would you say this is a better year to draft quarterbacks or to draft talent picks with proven talent? Yeah, I mean, I think the NFL overall is all about proven talent. You know, I think it's different than the NBA. I think the NBA is more of, you know, your potential. The NFL has potential, but you graded on what you have done. And you look at what Bryce Young has done the past 2 years, only throwing 12 interceptions, winning the Heisman, putting up buku numbers against that vaunted Georgia team in the SEC championship. I think he is that best quarterback. I think, like I said earlier, I think he separated himself. You look at Will Anderson, who could go number two, the pride out of Georgia. This guy is what you have done. This guy has been one of the top defensive edge rushers the past 2 or 3 years. He could have came out last year with Aiden Hutchinson, you know, and been a top pick. So it's going to be interesting. So, yeah, you got to have proven talent. So let's go to my next topic. So we're talking about, and I kind of touched on it, about the SEC East. We talked about the SEC East, the spring games. I mentioned Ole Miss spring game with the Pete Golden experience, how that came out. So I think, like I said, I think it's important Alabama fans come out for Alabama's 8A and show the new energy, show the excitement for the football program. That way we can go win a national championship and the players can go out there and prove it, how dominant that they want to be. So I want to shift. Speaking about this Alabama team, you know, I talked about what we need to do offensively, but I kind of want to talk about the hidden gems with this football team. You look at, and I'm going to say hidden gems, you know about Milroe Ty Simpson, Malik Benson, but I'm looking at other players. You know, you got Isaiah Bond, you got Kobe Prentice, but a hidden gem in that receiver room to me is a Kendrick Law. I think Kendrick Law is one of those players that you need to feed as much as possible. To me, his comp for me is the Deebo Samuel. I think you need to utilize him in that way. Get him touches in the run game, jet sweeps, quick passes. Let him make plays, you know, by himself and get him touches. So I think Kendrick Law, if we use him in the right, in Tommy Rees system, if he kind of try to use him like a Deebo Samuel, way Cal Shanahan does in San Francisco, I think he will be a hidden gem. And I'm talking about Kendrick Law. And I think another hidden gem is Roydell Williams. You know, I think we got Jason McClellan. You're hearing a lot about Justice Haynes. We got Richard Young. I think in order for Alabama to win the national championship, it's going to be a long season. So they're probably going to be playing 15 to 16 games. We're going to need about 5 or 6 running backs, I feel like. So we're going to have to utilize all those running backs. Justice Haynes, Richard Young, Jason McClellan, Roydell Williams, Jamarian Miller. We're going to have to utilize all those guys and just get behind that offensive line and just be dominant, just play old school football and bully ball and just make it happen. So that is, I want to talk about the hidden gems regarding Alabama. We talked about the spring talent. We discussed Tua. I want to shift gears and talk about the USFL because this is what we do at Football University. We talk about anything, everything football. We know AJ McCarron, the success he's having in the XFL, but I want to talk about the USFL. It kicked off this weekend, and I want to talk about the USFL Bama players as it relates to Alabama. And shouts out to Reuben Foster, man. He plays for the Pittsburgh Maulers, and he's up for Defensive Player of the Week. I think he had 12 tackles, had the forced fumble, and it got me thinking this is a great opportunity for players to have good tape and maybe get another shot in the NFL. And I think somebody mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier, James Knox. Listen, I think they could utilize a linebacker. You look at Reuben Foster, if he gets finished with these 8 games, continues to stay in shape, I think NFL teams would give him a shot. So, can y'all see me now? Are we good? Okay, we're back. So, in order for Alabama to be successful, Alabama's got to get back to being dominant on the field, being dominant on the road, on these away games. I think we go to Mississippi State, going to Texas A&M. Alabama's got to be road dominant whenever we play on the road, and I feel like obviously we know how to be dominant at home, but we got to know how to be dominant on the road. And then Alabama's being back dominant on the defensive end, running the ball. I think Alabama can get back and compete for a national championship and hopefully win. So sorry about the technical difficulties. I don't know what happened. Now let's talk about Bryce Young. And I kind of want to wind it down with Bryce Young in regards to this, that the comparisons. I think Bryce Young, I mentioned how the Carolina Panthers, Frank Wright, they're going with Bryce. They need to go ahead and make sure that they have the system to, put the pieces around for Bryce. And I think it's important that Bryce continues to improve. I think it's important that Bryce continues to improve, in the weight room, being able to take on hits, taking clean hits, getting the ball out quickly. That way he protects himself and he has a long career like Drew Brees. So when he was with the Saints. So I think it's important that Bryce Young does those things and Carolina puts the weapons around him. And I wanted to end on this, why I think Bryce Young will be the pick for the Carolina Panthers. And I want to talk about this. You compare Bryce Young's to other pro days with other quarterbacks. But Steve Smith raved about Bryce Young, and we know Steve Smith should be in the Hall of Fame wide receiver, playing at the Carolina Panthers and eventually playing for the Baltimore Ravens. But once again, he has raved about Bryce Young. So I think that just bodes well for Bryce Young. I made the comparison about Steph Curry, how he's the Steph Curry on grass. What is Steph Curry? Steph Curry's from North Carolina. He's a big Carolina Panther. So I think Steph Curry, if he had to choose, I know he's in the playoffs right now, but if he had to choose, I think he would pick Bryce Young. So that's 2 in Bryce Young's corner. Number 3, who's in Bryce Young's corner. I talked about Steph Curry and I talked about Steve Smith. Number 3, I think David Tepper. The owners, I think Mr. and Mrs. Tepper, they really like Bryce Young. You look, Bryce Young before his pro day, he had a hug with Miss Tepper. She was actually on the field watching Bryce Young pro day. So I think when we have the owners kind of involved, especially on the pro day, having that more personable interaction with Frank Reich, I felt like it was more business. But when it comes to the owners, I think they just fell in love with Bryce Young. And I think they're in Bryce Young's corner. So I want to discuss that. So, yeah, Bryce Young, he's got the owners in his pocket, the Teppers, Steph Curry, I believe, and Steve Smith. So that's what I want to talk about because that's what we do here at Football University. I discussed Bryce, Breeze, processing, Tua, the USFL. So we talked about Jalen and Tua, and I want to get y'all thoughts. Who do you think is going to have a bigger year next year? We mentioned Tua, we mentioned Jalen, and shouts out to Jalen having the big contract negotiation today and getting that big money, being the highest paid player. But who do you think is going to have a more successful year? We mentioned them possibly playing in the Super Bowl against each other. But, man, if you look, who could have the biggest year? It's going to be interesting, man. I think they both are going to have elite Pro Bowl level years and be in the MVP contention as they were last year. So it's going to be interesting. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. So let's get to a few comments real quick. A lot of Lori Caddell says, I think Tua will have a better year, but Jalen is on fire. A lot of people say, man, they are a lot of Georgia, Alabama smack talk. Wow, y'all are going at it again. But yeah, I think it's important for Tua that he stays healthy. I know he's taking on the jiu-jitsu, learning about falling, more leverage. I think he can be more proactive in that way. And you have more body control. Those type of ways that he can really stay on the field because Miami Dolphins are a totally different team with Tua on the field. So y'all are going at it. So let's kind of wrap it up. Let's wrap it up with that. Shouts out to Jalen Hurts making the money. Now we have an Alabama alum that is the highest paid player in NFL history. So Jalen, you did it the right way. You're inspiration to all. So shouts out to Jalen Hurts, Nicole Lynn, the Eagles. Oh, before I leave, I got to shout out Howie Roseman because this is what we do at Football University. We talk about the business side of football. Listen, Howie Roseman, to sign this deal for Jalen Hurts. I think that's what you have to do in the NFL. You got to sign or extend those guys early once they are successful. I mean, especially if your quarterback takes you to the Super Bowl. You look at the pattern. Patrick Mahomes goes to the Super Bowl, wins the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs, immediately extend him, pay him early. That way you can still invest in the rest of your team. I think so. Shouts out to Howie Roseman. He is wheeling and dealing. I mean, he still's got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. He's still got the number 10 pick. He's got the number 30 pick. So it's going to be interesting. So shouts out to the Eagles front office, Nicole Lynn. Shouts out to all the agents or the players out there. Unlike Lamar Jackson, which I get Lamar's trying to do it his way by not having an agent. But on the flip side, I do think when it comes to talking about millions of dollars and contracts and reading the fine print, understanding different types of contracts and money, when to get paid, how to break it down. I think it's important you have an agent. I think you have somebody who's like a Nicole Lynn, attorney, that's an agent, so she really knows how to deal with certain type of contracts and negotiations. So young players, get you a good representation when it comes to the business side of things. Once you get in the NFL, you can get paid like Jalen Hurts. So let's see. Y'all are just rolling in the comments. But yes, so we talked about Jalen, we talked about Tua, A-Day. Like I said, go out to William Bryant's tailgate. We want to have a lot of people this Saturday. We know 8A is this Saturday. Hopefully we have great weather. I'm hoping we get about 81,000, 82,000 and have that energy for this football team. And let's see how the quarterbacks face. Let's see how Milroe faces. Let's see how Ty Simpson faces. Let's see what excites you. What are you seeing from the secondary or the young receivers? Who are you interested in seeing? Is it the electric Justice Haynes, Jamarian Miller, the running backs? I mean, so much excitement seeing the offensive line being dominant. And listen, for me, I'm excited to see how this defense is going to pan out. So very excited to see. So all go out to 8A this Saturday. Enjoy T-Town. Hopefully we have beautiful weather and we will be able to discuss all the major news that comes out of Tuscaloosa's 8A game. I know we had a lot of shouts out to the student section, Lori Caddell, Jeff Stapleton. I am one, the big Georgia fan, talking a lot of Georgia, representing the Bulldogs fans in here. Shouts out to him, 6-0, William Bryant, Stephen Higgs, James Knox, Cindy Reed. Shouts out to you all in the student section. Hey, come back next week and join us again here for another edition at Football University, where we will be discussing the 8A game. And like I said, go out there and support the Tide. Let's get Bama back rolling and have good energy going into the season. That way Alabama can get back to being dominant and hopefully compete and win a national championship. But we're going to discuss it here at Football University, same time next Monday. Please join me. Thanks for being in the show. Look forward to seeing y'all next week. And this has been another great episode of Football University. See ya.